human brain, wrote Mark Twain, is a wonderful organ which starts to function from the time you're born, only to stop when you stand before an intellectual audience to speak. And it's compounded by another problem. I'm told there are three most difficult things a man can attempt to do in life, I believe, which I don't know if Raju caught it. The first is trying to climb a fence which is leaning towards you. Straight fence, you can always. Vertical fence, you can climb. Second is trying to kiss a girl who is leaning away from you. And the third is trying to speak after brilliant speakers like Arun, Raju, and Madam Abba. Don't you think I am in a pitiable position standing here? Ladies and gentlemen, let me thank all of you for your love. Whatever awards you have given, they have only humbled me more, and they have increased my responsibility. I always believed that reputation is what the world thinks of you, but character is what you are. There is so much good in the worst of us and so much bad in the best of us that none of us have the right to criticize any of us. I must thank your governor. In fact, he didn't know me at all, and he called me and said, "You must come for my conference," which was a pleasant surprise. I felt happy. I didn't bargain for this kind of an audience and this kind of speakers preceding me. Anyway, here I am, and it's my duty, ladies and gentlemen, to listen to you, to talk to you this morning. And it's yours to listen to me. But let's have a contract, because we are teachers. We go by the calendar, not by the clock. If any one of you in the audience has finished his or her duty before I seem to have finished mine, raise a hand, my speech will stop. Because I always believed in what Thomas Jefferson once wrote. When he became the president of America, his uncle told him, "Thomas, you are a great speaker. But remember, as a president, you have to follow these three rules. Stand up, speak up, and shut up." Friends, Rotary is a great organization. As your international president's representative told you, you have made a difference in people's lives. I am very happy. Congratulations, Godspeed, and good luck for the future. Having listened to the three speeches preceding me, I was thinking of talking to you my mind from my heart. Are you prepared to listen to the other side of the coin? Okay. Now, what is service? Let's contemplate about it. What is service? I'll give you an example of what Wordsworth wrote about service. Service, wrote Wordsworth, service is like the daisy. The daisy, with the shadow that it casts, protects the lingering dewdrops from the piercing sun. Look at the morning. I don't know how many of you get up before the sun rises. If you went for a walk early morning, there's so much of dewdrops, beautiful, tender dewdrops sitting on all places. And the sun comes up and destroys them, burns them out. But this little flower, daisy, what does it do? It doesn't join the Rotary Club or Lions Club, but it just does its duty of opening up in the morning. And what does it do in return? It just throws a shadow around, and that shadow for some time protects those lingering dewdrops. In economics, they call it as externality. You do something and something else happens. So what did the daisy do? Daisy just did its duty. Friends, today, man's greatest enemy is not polio or tuberculosis or AIDS, but man himself. I'm using the word man for the whole species. So women present here should not misunderstand me as a male chauvinistic pig. I'm using man for humankind because it's an easier word, saves some energy each time saying humankind or a man or a woman. So pardon me. Why has man become man's own enemy? Economists did wonderful studies to find out if man basically is hardwired to be compassionate. Is he altruistic? Two economists did it. In 2002, they got the Nobel Prize. See, this is how the Nobel Prize goes. Vernon Smith and John Cannon. What did they do? They did experiments called, now everything is in experiments now. Everybody thinks science is a great thing, so let's do experiments. Economists also said, we'll do experiments, lab experiments. So they did lab experiments. They went to the stock market and tried an experiment called dictator experiment, ultimatum experiment. Two experiments. I won't read the details because Raju hasn't given me enough time to go into the details. And with these experiments, they found out that man is truly altruisticus. They called him Homo altruisticus, hardwired to be kind, like all Rotarians. You know, you gave 375,000 American dollars to the Rotary Foundation. Godspeed, good luck. Very nice. So you're all altruistic. But there was in the same Department of Economics in Chicago University a different pedigree of an economist who has come from real bottom. You know, normally these professors of economy in American universities come from a pedigree of teachers, great people, rich people and all. Here was a lorry driver's son, a truck driver's son. His name was John List. John List, with great difficulty, was accepted at the University of Chicago after having taught economics in various other universities, though he had brilliant credentials to be professor of economics. But the higher pedigree people wouldn't touch him. You know, like our untouchability, which is there in America as well, but in a different kind, that's all. They don't call it the same name that we call. Now, John thought there is something amiss in this experiment. So he repeated the same dictator ultimatum experiments in real life. Instead of having this kind of an observed thing where everybody was watched as to what they do, he went to the real stock market and tried to see how the agents rip off the customers and how everybody is cheated day in and day out. So he came out with a beautiful paper, much more scientific than the paper of Vernon Smith and probably Cannon. And this was published in the most respectable journal. But poor John List never got the Nobel Prize. He didn't really come up to that. And what happened? He showed man is really, really Homo economicus. He wants to make money for himself. He doesn't want to share it with others. Of course, Arun is right. He quoted some other scriptures. I'll tell you the Isha Upanishads, which said, Isha vasam idam sarvam. Everything belongs to God. Yat kincha jagatyam jagat. Even the dust particle belongs to God. But tena tyaktena bunjitaha. Rejoice in giving. Rejoice in giving. Magridam kasyasvidam dhanam. Don't be avarice, greed, jealousy. These are not good things. All this is fine in philosophy. But when it comes to brass tacks, you say, okay, let it be there. Let me make a fast buck now. Now tell me one area where our efforts today in the 21st century, we're all enlightened. Most of us, you know, we have so many organizations like this, Rotary, Lions, Inner Wheel, dining table or round table, square table, etc., etc. Millions of people have become good people. But the world, if anything, is becoming worse and worse and worse and worse. I don't know if you know the real thing behind. I suggest that you buy a beautiful book in addition to all your donations, which costs 500 rupees, and you can rotate it in the club. This book is called Super Freakonomics. What's the book's name? Super Freakonomics. One good economist, Stephen Levitt, and a good journalist, Stephen Dubner, wrote this book. They have written a book earlier called Freakonomics, but that's not as good. Super Freakonomics is very, very good, which will give you the real reason what is happening in the world. Now, Madam Abba, unfortunately, is not here, and Arun is here, and all of you said, our key thrust is polio eradication. Polio has disappeared, fine. But did you know these diseases have a different thing altogether? Disease doesn't go because of our treatment or vaccination. Disease goes when the immune system of the human beings improves. Remember that? These are called dynamic diseases. They have a cycle. If a layman wants to know what a dynamic disease is, I don't recommend you go into the medical literature because there's a jungle full of dead wood. There's occasional teak or rosewood, but to get there, you will be eaten by the tiger or bitten by a snake. So I suggest a good book for you, a layman's book, which is called Turning Point. Book is called Turning Point. written by a physicist who himself became altruistic. His name is Fritjof Capra. Fritjof Capra is teaching physics in the New York University. Now what happens, this whole thing inside, you think, oh, science is very great. Let me tell you a small, quick story. 1907, J.J. Thomson gets the Nobel Prize, who was the director of the Cavendish Institute of Physics in Cambridge. Nobel Prize for saying that electrons are particles. Fine, Nobel Prize. 1937, his own son, P.J. Thomson, gets the Nobel Prize 30 years later for saying that they are waves. Nobel Prize. 1932, Erwin Schrödinger says they are wavicles. They are neither waves nor particles. Nobel Prize. And 1925, who got the Nobel Prize in 1956, Werner Heisenberg said, you just don't know what an electron is. Because you just can't see it. How do I see Arun? When I look at Arun, a few photons from his body eject out and hit my retina, and then I know Arun is there. Now, if one photon leaves an electron, the electron becomes non-electron. This is described in the scriptures thousands of years ago. What did it say? Asino vrajati duram, shayano jati sarvata. You have an electron which you can't see. And so beautifully said in the Gita, which is from the Upanishad, which says, Bahir antascha bhutanam. It is inside and outside of everything. Charam acharamevacha. It keeps moving. You're all, moving leptoquarks, but you look solid. It's Maya. Charam acharamevacha. It moves but looks non-move. Sukshmavatet avijnayam. So this is the beauty of it. It is so subtle that no vijnana can ever look at the electron. That's the beauty. Durastam. For those who don't know, they don't know. Cha, aniketa cha. It's very close if you know. Tat. That tat was mistaken for God and we lost science. There's so much of science in the Vedic wisdom that the Westerners now are trying to investigate. You go to any Indian university, they read Einstein's book. Einstein was a clerk in the patent office in Bern. But you go to Germany, do you know what they read? They read the Indian scriptures. The present president of the Max Planck Institute in Munich, with the best physics institute in the world, Hans-Peter Dürr, a good friend of mine, has got all our scriptures and he quotes these things. Now he has realized E is equal to M. You and I are taught E is equal to MC squared, isn't it? No, E is equal to M. And he calls it as A duality. And he was telling me, what is my nomenclature of A duality? Look at those Indian seers. They called it thousands of years ago as Advaita. No duality at all. Fascinating, isn't it? Now I'll come to reality, my dear friends. Disease is directly proportionate to the virulence of the organism, but inversely proportionate to the resistance of the host. 1915, Theobald Smith was an American physician who had the audacity to say this because up until then everybody believed in Robert Koch. Germ, disease, kill the germ, disease gone. No, disease has not gone nowhere. I won't tell you more about polio because it might hurt, because you don't want to know the truth. Truth is bitter. Truth is very bitter, and truth can influence only half a score of men in a century, said Aristotle, where falsehood and mystery will drag millions by the nose. I will tell you something. There is an Indian scientist called Pushpa Bhargava. Pushpa Bhargava is a respected Indian scientist who was the vice president of the Indian Knowledge Commission, right? Now he resigned from the commission because, I'll tell you why. Anyway, he wrote a beautiful paper for you people to read, which is called The Politics of Poliomyelitis. What's the paper? Politics of Poliomyelitis. It's available on Hindu, and if you want to know, it's the March 11th Hindu, 2000 something. I don't exactly remember the year. But if you go to Hindu's archives and push there, Pushpa Bhargava, friends, knowledge advances not by repeating known facts, but by refuting false dogmas, of which there are many in the world. Number one, even a textbook of medicine as recently as 2006, the British National Formulary has this sentence in it. Number one, do not give live oral polio vaccine to malnourished children. Number two, if you want to give it, first improve their nourishment, and when they have enough nourishment, then only give it. Number three, space it by more than 1 month, because repeated doses quickly will damage the system. And number five, it's only in India that the 31st dose is being given the other day. And the argument is all children don't come every time, so we'll give it. Those who have come, they have taken 31 doses. Now what happens in a poor child if you give polio vaccine? It's a live virus. So if the virus goes in and your whole immune system's head office is in the gut, from your mouth to the anus. And we need germs there. Do you know how many germs you got between your mouth and anus? You'll be shocked. 10 to the power 13, 100,000 billion germs you got there. If they're not there, you're not alive. We have a symbiosis with them. And this virus goes there in a child which has no immune system at all. The virus mutates. It becomes a powerful P3 virus, P1 virus, the deadliest virus, and comes out in the shit. And mind you, we don't have toilets in our villages. And the shit gets dissipated in rainy season all over the place. Other children touch it and eat it, and they are now given a deadly P3 virus. And according to Pushpa Bhargava, thousands of Indian children got polio recently, not because of the God-given polio, but man-made polio. Do you know what India needs, my dear friends? Man is man's biggest enemy. What is the greatest service you can do? Let me tell you from my heart. Give a good example to society. Give a good example to society. I can preach to all of you and think that I have preached to the Rotarians and they will all become good human beings tomorrow. I have no guarantee. But I can take an oath standing on this pedestal. I will be a better BMX tomorrow than what I am today. I am sure of one thing. There is one rascal less in this world. I want each Rotarian to take an oath today. I want every Rotarian, Rotary kid, Rotary, everybody to take an oath, go home, stand before the mirror, cross your heart and say, I shall be a better human being tomorrow. I shall be homo altruisticus and not homo economicus. Because it's so easy to live by sharing. And let me tell you as a doctor, it improves your health. The immune system depends on three things. A, your mind, your consciousness. All negative thoughts destroy you and not the person they're aimed at. Ayurveda so beautifully said, Krodha, Shokha, Bhaya, Ayasa, Viruddhanna Bhojana, Taponalan, Katva, Amla, Kshara, Lavana, Tikshnoshnati, Rakta, Pitta, Prakopet. All diseases come from the mind. And what is the solution? I'll give the Rotary solution. Hita, Mita, Ahara, Sevi. Eat in moderation. Be a gunda. Best thing is eat it and walk away and forgive him. Forgiving is not cowardice. Forgiving requires a lot of strength of mind. Then what does it say? Data, Samaha, Satyapara. Data, be a giver, not a taker. Samaha, treat everyone as equal. Don't look somebody down, look somebody up. And a man's character can be found out how he behaves with others. You just have to observe a man talking to his boss and talking to his peon. Then I know what the man is. If he talks in two different ways, he is a man to be shunned. I always tell young girls looking for a husband just to go and watch him at his work. And see how he behaves with his boss and his assistant. If the behavior is different, leave him. End your dating that day itself because he is going to be a very bad person. You just have to observe a man talking to his boss and talking to his peon. Then I know what the man is. If he talks in two different ways, he is a man to be shunned. I always tell young girls looking for a husband just to go and watch him at his work. And see how he behaves with his boss and his assistant. If the behavior is different, leave him. End your dating that day itself because he is going to be a very bad person. Now what does India need? Service, I'll tell you. 5 things. The UNIDO said 5 things India needs. 5 things. A, clean drinking water for every citizen. Clean drinking water. Even in the remotest village, I'll tell you how to give clean drinking water. You know water supply? Go to the village and tell them, collect the water in a clean vessel, open vessel, cover it with a thin cloth, put it in the hot sun for 2 hours. No germ survives there. The greatest germ killer is the ultraviolet rays from the sun. Even if you have an air-conditioned bedroom in the 5-star place, open that in the morning and let sun's rays come in so that your bedroom gets sterilized. And for saying that sun rays kills every germ, Phil Nielsen got the Nobel Prize in medicine in 1903. நான் பொய் சொல்லல, நிஜமா சொல்றேன். I'm not bluffing. I'm telling you the truth. Now, clean drinking water. 2, 3 square meals a day uncontaminated with human and or animal excreta. It's very difficult. 3, economic empowerment of village women. Man earns, he drinks, comes home empty-handed. Woman can sleep empty stomach, but she can't see her own children sleeping empty stomach. Not knowing where your next meal comes from is the greatest risk factor for a heart attack and cancer. Did you know that? If you know, they did a survey of offices in England. The managing director never got a heart attack as much as the peon got. The managing director gets a salary. You know, a study recently showed the minute you get a Nobel Prize, walk that Stockholm, you know, you just walk that stage, you live 2 years extra. But a man who doesn't know when his next meal coming from, he will die of a heart attack. So, please empower the women economically. 3rd, 4th, 1 toilet for every house. Lot of things get managed. 1 toilet for every house. 5, see that girls go to school at least up to the 20 years, because fertility between 16 and 20 is 5 times greater than after 25. If a girl in India can get married after 25, population problem automatically decreases. You don't have to cut nothing. Another thing that you can do is to have a roof on top of those poor people, for which right now they have only the starlit sky. This is India's need of health care. I saw beautiful pictures of midday meal. I love it. But that doesn't do the job. The child is made in the mother's womb in the first 3 months of pregnancy, which is called the first trimester. This is the time all organs are made, and if the mother doesn't have nutrition, organs are not made properly. So the child will, if ever it survives and comes out, 50% of them die in the uterus. That's called stillbirth. If they come out at all, they are very small children, and they have a very small heart, very thin arteries, very small pancreas, very small liver. That's all right, because they live at least up to 30 years and then become diabetics. You know, this poor fellow, if he survives 30 years, he goes to Dubai, cleans the road, comes back with some money. There he eats a lot of, meat and things like that, which is very cheap. By the time he comes here and goes for a checkup in Justlock Hospital, he's a diabetic. That doesn't matter. But what worries me is, there is a part of the brain called the hippocampus major, which is necessary for memory, creativity, learning, studying, everything. And this is so small in these children whose mothers didn't have nutrition, that these children, even if you give them 150% reservation, cannot pass SSLC. Because they have no creativity at all. I want you to give midday meal for every pregnant woman in Bombay, poor woman in the slums, right from the day she loses her first menstrual period. Please do that. You will get a generation of brilliant children who, even living in the slums, will one day get a Nobel Prize. If you want more details, I have written a detailed article in the Bhavan's Journal about this, and 2 chief ministers picked up the article and called me. One, of course, in one area, I am the chairman of their health department in Bihar, Gujarat. They have implemented this. Every pregnant woman now gets a midday meal, which is more important than giving a midday meal to a child. 950 million people in this world do not have more than 1 meal a day. Did it bother you? You are worried about various other things. You are worried about giving sight to somebody who has got a cataract. But did you know why he gets the cataract in the first place? Cataract is seen at the age of 40 in poor people, whereas it is seen at the age of 80 for rich people like you. The difference is simply this. For cataract to come, or to prevent cataract, you require zinc and other elements in the food. So if you have a variety of food, especially fruits and vegetables, etc., your cataract gets postponed. These poor people don't have that at all. They have some rice gruel or wheat gruel and some dried thing or some pickles. They have nothing. And then the virulent ultraviolet rays. So they get cataract at the age of 30. Then you go and say, I will remove the cataract. 1,000 cataracts Rotary Club has removed. Everybody claps. But I would be happy if you fed those fellows first and prevent a cataract. This is the most important thing. Vaccinations, good, they are good. But ask yourself one question. Other than smallpox, is there any disease in the world which vaccine has eradicated? The answer is no. For the simple reason that a vaccine does not eradicate a disease. It will give you an impression. But the vaccine requires good nutrition first place. The vaccine doesn't prevent disease. The vaccine requires good nutrition. And the nutrition is protein. Antibodies are proteins. So if you have good protein like your children, you vaccinate them, they are fine. But a poor man's child doesn't have protein at all, you vaccinate it. So the British formulary says, in a poor country with lot of malnourished children, the only way to prevent polio is to give Salk vaccine. It's a little costlier, doesn't matter. It comes to about 7.5 rupees per child. It's not a big thing, but every country has banned live oral vaccine except Africa and India, and this is the only place where it can be sold. It's banned. You can't give oral polio vaccine in countries like America and Europe. You can give Salk vaccine, which is an injection vaccine. But here the argument is, we don't have money for that. It requires a lot of money. That is not the argument, my dear friends. You want to do good, right? Do the right thing. Why have half-hearted measures? There are a lot of philanthropes in this world. And you see them on the television, you see them. But are they really philanthropes? You go deep into it and you find they have an agenda, a hidden agenda. This is what worries me. So I want a Rotarian to walk his talk. And many times what happens is we have superficial talks. I'm reminded of a joke. One day a fool like me was traveling in the plane. He was a very arrogant fool like me. And next to him was sitting an innocent girl, high school girl, reading a book very seriously. So this man wanted to strike a conversation with that girl. He said, young lady, I am told that if neighboring passengers talk to each other, planes go faster. Why not I start talking? She said, fine. She looked up from the book, seriously reading, and then she said, talk about what? Then he thought for a while. What can I talk about? Nuclear science, nuclear physics. So I said, what about nuclear energy? Young girl said, that's fine, that's a good subject. But before that, I'll ask you a question, she said. He said, go ahead, I'm here to answer. She said, a cow, a goat, and a horse, right? They all eat grass. Agreed? Yes. But a goat brings out hard pellets at the other end. The cow puts out a large sort of putty, and the horse brings out large shakes of dried grass. Why is that? She asked. This arrogant fool like me thought for a long time, scratched his head and said, come to think of it, I don't know the answer. Then she said, well, that serves you. A man who doesn't know shit, it doesn't deserve to talk about nuclear energy. One day a fool like me was traveling in the plane. He was a very arrogant fool like me. And next to him was sitting an innocent girl, high school girl, reading a book very seriously. So this man wanted to strike a conversation with that girl. He said, young lady, I am told that if neighboring passengers talk to each other, planes go faster. Why not I start talking? She said, fine. She looked up from the book, seriously reading, and then she said, talk about what? Then he thought for a while. What can I talk about? Nuclear science, nuclear physics. So I said, what about nuclear energy? Young girl said, that's fine, that's a good subject. But before that, I'll ask you a question, she said. He said, go ahead, I'm here to answer. She said, a cow, a goat, and a horse, right? They all eat grass. Agreed? Yes. But a goat brings out hard pellets at the other end. The cow puts out a large sort of putty, and the horse brings out large shakes of dried grass. Why is that? She asked. This arrogant fool like me thought for a long time, scratched his head and said, come to think of it, I don't know the answer. Then she said, well, that serves you. A man who doesn't know shit, it doesn't deserve to talk about nuclear energy. This is what's happening. See, our problem is, we all talk about diseases. Somebody has told us we talk about it. You are even telling hepatitis B vaccine. Do you know the real science behind hepatitis B vaccine? It is not required in India at all. Our risk of hepatitis B is 0.16%. And that too, what risk? For people like us, it is higher risk because I am a doctor, you are a nurse or whatever. and you are a healthcare worker, you have to. But go to the school and vaccinate children. My God, there are so many contraindications for that. And I am frightened that homo altruisticus Rotarians get into this homo economics business of selling vaccines. Please think about it. Please think about it. I don't want you to do anything except think, read, go deep into it and find out. Now, reason why smallpox is eradicated is that's the natural vaccination. What does a student read in the book? Edward Jenner did vaccination. If Edward Jenner did vaccination, all of us would have died of smallpox, because what he used was cowpox, which today we know by genetic engineering is totally different from smallpox virus. But there was a doctor sent by the East India Company to India to study Indian vaccination system in the 18th century. The year was 1767 and the man's name was T.Z. Holwell, Holwell. He was an FRS, a scientist, and an FRCP London. He came to India and went to Bengal and saw the beautiful Ayurvedic system of vaccination prevalent in the 17th century, 18th century, and he waited there for 20 years to prospectively study the vaccinated people vis-a-vis the non-vaccinated people, and found out vaccinated 90% disease gone. And he went back and submitted this report in 1747 to the Royal College President to be handed over to the king. And from then on, the Indian vaccination system prevails, where attenuated smallpox virus is used, not cowpox virus of Edward Jenner. And if you want to know what Edward Jenner did, you will now hang him. He had a boy called Phipps, James Phipps, as his errand boy, very poor boy, in his clinic. And there is a cow maid who came and told him, I am not worried about smallpox, Dr. Jenner. I have had cowpox. He said, cowpox gives you protection again? Yes, yes. So he asked her, next time your cow gets cowpox, get me some lymph. So she got him the next cow lymph, and he injected this to the boy and told him, I'll give you some injection for strength. This boy almost died of severe cowpox. He survived with the skin of his teeth. The minute he survived, this fellow injects him smallpox pus. Can you believe that? And he was lucky he survived. And that's vaccination. No, that's not vaccination. Know the truth. You go to the internet and say Indian vaccination system, and you will get all the details of what. See, this is what's happening. What you know, what the television tells you, what the paper writes, may not be the truth. May not be the truth. It's not the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So you must get to know these things. So before you go to talk about nuclear energy, try to find out why the difference in the shit. Friends, Rotary organization is a very powerful organization. In unity, you can do a lot of things to this world. You can change the face of the world. And Rotary has been here for 105 years. Now another 105 years, you can make this world a heaven. Provided each one of us becomes homo altruisticus. I know what you will say when you go home. I had a friend of mine who used to go from place to place lecturing. And he was a parish priest who was lecturing on very serious things. One day he was in Bombay, he was lecturing in the Renaissance Hotel, and he was staying in some small hotel in MIDC. And being a Sunday, he wanted to write a letter to his wife at home, so he wrote a letter, came out, he wanted to post it, he didn't know where to post, where the post office was. So a couple of urchins were playing, being a Sunday. He said, "Arey yaar, post office kidhar hai? Abba madam ka post office kidhar hai?" So the children said, "Aiye sab, Abba madam humko malum hai, aiye." They took a post office, he posted there, he was coming back. Then he suddenly thought, I am a priest. These children have helped me. What do I do in return? I'll buy them some chocolate. He goes to the chocolate shop and buys the chocolate, puts his hand in, the wallet is in the hotel. So he tells the sorry children, my money is not there. I am going to give you 2 free passes for my talk in the Renaissance Hotel. It costs 100 rupees, but you will go free. So he wrote a pass. Children laughed. Who wants to go for talk? There are a lot of fools like BMID talking, but listening is more difficult. Talking is very easy. Anybody can talk, but sitting and listening is very, very difficult. So children laughed. He said, "Why are you laughing?" "No, sir, we just wanted to know what you're talking about." He suddenly became very serious. "I'm a priest. What am I talking about? I'm talking about God. I'm talking about theology, way to heaven and things like that." Children burst out laughing. He said, "Why?" "Sir, a man who doesn't know the way to the post office, how does he know way to heaven?" Thank you very much.